Hello guys, Book Ada. So first we start off with a translator's note here, so let me quickly read it to you, but Ada 1 is chapter. The first two chapters of Book Ada continue the programme of Book Zeta, and they comprise what purports to be a summary of the whole discussion in Ada 1, and the final statement of conclusions in Ada 2. The summary offered in Ada 1, however, is to say the least elliptical. The chapter does resume the main themes of Zeta 1 to 2 and briefly recapitulates the programmatic announcement at the start of Zeta 3, but the actual summary of the discussion is compressed into a very short paragraph, which, in any case, has almost nothing to say about the last four chapters of the book, where we might have expected to find helpful summaries of the various positive and negative points made in Zeta. We instead find a slightly inconsistent discussion of the claims of matter to be substance, which were, of course, dismissed in Zeta 3. Now we learn that in a weaker sense, matter too can be said to be substance. Now this is not taken to undermine in any important way the thrust of Zeta. The blatant lack of correspondence between the summary in this chapter and the actual course of Zeta is striking even by Aristotle's relaxed standards in this respect. It is naturally grist to the mill for those who argue that the composition of Zeta must have taken place in stages. That's the end of the translator's note. Back to the metaphysics. Well, we have a considerable amount of material to hand. Now we must put it all together to achieve a synthesis and so end up with a complete position. We have, I take it, already expressed what we are after as the causes, principles, and elements of substance. And substances can be grouped into those which are universally accepted as such and those which figure only in the proprietary accounts of particular schools. Those generally acknowledged include 1. Fire, earth, water, and air, and the other simple bodies, as also 2. Plants, plant parts, animals, and animal parts, and lastly 3. The heavens and their parts. By contrast, it is a distinctive philosophical position that forms and mathematicals are substances. In a quite different way, it has been the upshot of our arguments that the what it was to be that thing and the substrate are substances. And in yet another way of arguing, it turns out that the genus more than the species is a substance, and the universal more than the particulars. Of course, the forms are hardly unconnected with the universal and the genus. The argument that establishes the one is also that which establishes the other. Well, the what it was to be that thing is in any case a substance. And since the account of a what it was to be that thing is a definition, an account has been offered of definition and of per se being. But of course, the definition is an account, and an account has parts. So it behoved us to consider and that the parts, what kind were parts of the substance and what kind were not, and whether they were also the same as the parts of the definition. And by contrast, neither the universal nor the genus are in fact substances. The jury will remain out for a little on the forms and mathematicals, which are, of course, advocated in some quarters to be substances over and above the perceptible ones. Anyway, back to the non-controversial substances. These are the perceptible substances, and the hallmark of all perceptible substances is the possession of matter. Now, the substrate is a substance, but in a variety of ways. It is so on the one hand as matter. By matter I mean what A is not a possessor of thisness in actuality, but B is a possessor of thisness in potentiality. On the other hand, the substrate is also differently substance as the account and shape. The letter is something which A has thisness and B can be separated in account. And in yet a third way, the substrate is a substance as the composite. The distinctive features of the composite are that it can be produced and destroyed, and that it can be separated simplicator. Simple separability is a feature of some, but not all, account specified substances. As for matter, there can be no doubt that it is a substance. Consider all changes between opposites. In all of them, there is something that underlies the change. Take locational change. It involves something that is at P1 at T1 and at P2 at T2. Or take quantitative change. There is something that is of size x at T1 and either lesser or greater at T2, or qualitative change in which there is something that is, say, well at T1 and ill at T2. Nor is it otherwise with substantial change. Here too, there is something which is being produced at T1 and being destroyed at T2. A substrate as having thisness at T2 and a substrate by way of privation at T2. All the other changes are attendant on substantial change, but there are one or two of the other changes that do not bring with them a substantial change. It by no means follows from a thing's having matter for the purposes of locomotion that it must also have it for those of production and destruction. See the physics for the distinction between simplicator and non-simplicator production. Next page. And we have another author's note, 802. Here it is. In the light of the new discussion of matter in the previous chapter, Aristotle is now in a position to make still clearer the sense in which form is substance, and thus to bring the whole discussion to a conclusion. The distinction between matter and form that is operating in this discussion anticipates the distinction between potentiality and actuality, which is the subject of Book Theta. In the present discussion, the matter of a sensible particular is associated, in Aristotle's usual way, with its potential and the form with its actuality. More saliently, Aristotle now associates the actual aspects of the being of a composite particular with the species differentia of the genus to which it belongs. Thus, the doctrine that form is substance becomes, in its final formulation, the doctrine that the differentia is substance. It is not entirely clear how this conclusion is to be generalized beyond the case of sensible substances, but it has also become clear progressively through the whole discussion that it is sensible substances, and especially animate beings, in which Aristotle is most interested. That is the end of the translator's note. Back to the Metaphysics, where substance as material substrate is non-controversial, and it is this substance which has its being potentially. So the chore we have left is that of saying what the substance is of perceptible things that has its being as an actuality. It was, it seems, the opinion of Democritus that things are subject to three differentiations. In his system, the material substrate persists as a one and the same, but is differentiated either by rhythm, aka shape, slant, aka position, or deployment, aka disposition. However, it is clear that there are in fact a large number of differentiations. For instance, the account of certain things is based on the mode of combination of their matter. With some, for example, honey drink, being combined by blending, and some by, for example, a besom, by binding, some a book by gluing, and some a chest by nailing, and some by a combination of combinations. Certain other things are accounted for in terms of their position, such as the threshold and the lintel, which differ only in their location in the design. There are things, too, that are picked out by their timing as supper and breakfast, and those that are identified merely by their location, which is how we tell one wind from another. And finally, there are things of which we give an account by making use of some feature that they have as perceptible entities. Their hardness, as it might be, or softness, their density and rarity, their aridity or moisture. Sometimes it is a selection of such features that does the job. Sometimes all, in all cases by dint either of some surfeit or of some deficiency. So, of course, for each of these ways of distinguishing, there is a corresponding way of saying that something is. A threshold is a threshold because this is where it goes, with the concomitant that the what it was to be a threshold picks out what it was to fit in here, whereas the what it was to be ice picks out what it was to be solidified in a certain way. There are, of course, also things for which the what it was to be that thing is defined in terms of all these differentiations, by their being the outcome to some extent of mixture, to some extent of blending, to some extent of fastening, to some extent of solidification, to some extent of the other modes of differentiation. Consider a hand or a foot, and you will see what I mean. What this shows is that it is important to understand the kind of differentiation, given that they are the principles of the beings of things. Some things, that is, are marked out by being more, or conversely, less f, by being dense, say, or rare, and so forth, which are all instances of the surfeit or deficiency differentiation. Anything differentiated by its shape or its smoothness or roughness is an instance of differentiation by straightness and curvature. And there are some things for which the what it was to be that thing consists in their being mixed, and the what it was not to be that thing in their not being mixed. All of which serves to underline that, assuming that the substance of each thing is a cause of the what it was to be that thing, it is to these differentiations that we must turn if we are inquiring into the cause of the what it was to be that thing for each of the perceptible things. It is not that any of the differentiations cited is a substance, not even in conjunction with matter. Rather, for each thing, the differentiation is something kind of like substance. In the case of substances, it is the actuality itself that gets predicated of the matter. Whereas in the case of other definitions, it is that which is most nearly the actuality. This bears some explication. Suppose, for instance, the definiendum is threshold. The definition will be wood or stone in dot 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 situation. Okay, there may be times with this latter definition where we need to rope in the purpose of the building as well. Suppose the definitum is ice, then the definition will be water frozen or solidified in dot 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 manner. Suppose it is harmony, and you have dot 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 mixture of high and low pitch. You get, I take it, the picture. And what this shows is that for different kinds of matter there will be a different actuality, and thus account. In some cases the actuality will be the combination, in others the mixture, and in still others some other one of the differentiations. So if you want to define building, you have three choices. Either one, you can list the stones, bricks, and beams giving what is potentially a building, viz., the matter of a building, or two, your account can be enclosed space for the housing of objects or persons, or something to that sort of effect. In this case, what you are giving is the actuality of the building. Alternatively, three, you can put them both together and give the third, composite substance. Quite a good way of putting the point is to say that the account in terms of differentiation is the account of the form actuality, whereas that in terms of the constituents of the thing is more the account of the matter. Such composite definitions are the kind once favored by Archytas. For example, definitum, no breeze, definition, absence of motion in a large volume of air. Here, the air is the matter, and the stillness is the actuality and substance. Definitum, calm. Definition, flat sea. Here, the sea is the matter, the flatness the actuality, shape. Our discussion has made clear both what perceptible substance is and the ways in which it is. A perceptible substance can be such either as matter or as shape and actuality, or thirdly as the composite of matter and actuality. We have another translator's note, 8 of 3. The discussion has, as we have seen, been brought to a conclusion at the end of 802, and the remaining 4 chapters constitute a kind of series of appendices to that discussion, which is not to say that they do not broach many new aspects of Aristotle's position. The present chapter deals with 3 loosely related questions which can be very roughly grouped under the rubric of form and actuality. 8 of 4 to 5 has some further points to make about matter, and 8 of 6 returns to the subject of Zeta 12, the unity of the definition, which is in many ways the crucial element in the whole discussion of substance. The first selection of the chapter deals with the problem that the names of things are standardly ambiguous in their indicating either the composite particular or the form of the particular. This problem is mildly vexatious in practice, but it does not raise any profound theoretical difficulties, provided that we keep clearly in mind that it is form which is to be identified with essence and substance. This being so, it is true that in one sense a horse, say, is identical with its substance, though not in another. The second section of the chapter contains a polemic against those who argue that substance is merely a kind of comprehensive list of the material components of the particular. As against this, Aristotle repeats his position that substance is a formal principle, which can be reduced neither to any one component of the particular, nor to the mere list of all of them. The final section of the chapter contains a rather puzzling discussion of the similarities between substance and number. The key points are that neither number nor substance can be indefinitely divisible, that they cannot remain what they are if they lose some part of themselves, that they are both determinate actualities and determinate natures, and that neither of them admit of the more and less. That is the end of the translator's note. Back to the metaphysics. It is vital to be aware that there are sometimes real cases of uncertainty as to whether some name signifies a compound substance or the actuality and shape of a compound substance. Does, for instance, building pick out the compound, viz., protective structure composed from bricks and stones in ... arrangement, or the formal actuality, protective structure? Does line signify longitudinal dyad or just dyad? Does animal indicate embodied soul, or what is the substance and actuality of a specific body? Just soul? To be sure, animal could very easily indicate either. It is a name not so much specified by a single account as focused on a single thing. Anyway, this issue about names matters in some contexts, but really has nothing to do with the examination of perceptible substance. This is because it is the form actuality to which the what it was to be that thing attaches. So soul and what it was to be a soul are the same thing, whereas man and what it was to be a man are not the same thing, unless man can pick out soul too, in which case they are in a way the same and in a way not. Now it is clear if you look into it that it is not the case that both the letters and their combination are components of the syllable, nor that a building is both its bricks and the combination thereof. This has to be right. The combination or mixture is not composed of the things of which it is a combination or mixture. And the point bears generalization. Suppose we define threshold by its disposition, and the disposition is not composed of the threshold, but, if anything, the threshold of the disposition. And in the same spirit, man does not consist of animal and bipedal. Rather, if we take these latter to be the material components, there must be some additional entity, neither an element nor composed of an element, but just that very thing the removal of which leads to a purely material count. But if this entity is the cause of being and substance for the object, then it is the account of this that is the account of the substance itself. As for this substance, it must either A, be eternal, or B, 1, perishable without perishing, and 2, produced without being produced. Elsewhere, a proof with expository clarification has been given to the effect that the form is neither made nor produced. What gets made is a this, and what gets produced is a composite. And the question whether if something is perceptible is its substance is separable is not to be resolved by anything that has been said so far. Or in fact, it obviously cannot be in some cases. For instance, there cannot be separable substance for things like building and tool, which cannot exist beyond their instances. Maybe cases like building and tool are not even substances anyway. Maybe nothing is a substance that is not a natural composition. It would be perfectly reasonable to hold that it is a nature, and only a nature, that is substance among things that perish. There is even in this an application of that old chestnut of Antisthenes, acolytes, and other buffoons of the same kidney. Their claim was that a definition of what something is impossible. Their reason that a definition is a mega account, by contrast, on this view, it is possible to explain what something is like. So with silver, say, one cannot give a definition of what it is, but one can perfectly well say that it is like tin. On the same lines as this, there is some substance for which a definition or account is possible, viz., composite substance, whether perceptible or intelligible, whereas the primary components of such substance are indefinable. And the reason for this is that a definitional account indicates an x instead of a y, with the y being the matter and the x being the shape form. It is also clear that if there is in any way in which substances are numbers, then this is the way in which they are so and not as the numbers of units. Though this view has its supporters, after all, definition 2 is a kind of number, being divisible right down to indivisibles, for a definitional account cannot be infinite, and this is just the sort of thing that a number is. With number 2, if you remove or add some one of the things of which the number is composed, you no longer have the same number on your hands but a different one. Even if the subtraction or addition is as small as you like, and in the same way, neither the definition nor the what it was to be that thing will persist through any subtraction or addition. And there is a further similarity: a number must be a thing by dint of being which it is a unity, even though in our present ignorance we cannot give an account of just what it is by dint of which a number is a unity, unless it is not one after all. The choice is between a number is not a unity by something like a heap, or b, a number is a unity, and then it becomes necessary to give an account of what it is. That makes it a single thing with many components. And just so the definition is a unity, and again, just so, this cannot at present be explained. And there is nothing odd about this result. The account of both number and substance is the same, and substance is a unity in the same way that number is. A substance is not. Pace certain theorists a unity as a kind of unit or point. Rather, each substance is an actuality, a natural kind. One other point: number does not tolerate the more or less, nor does formal substance. If any substance does, it is substance with matter. Okay, we have covered a. Commonly agreed, controversial substances get produced and destroyed. In what way is this possible and in what way not? B. Reduction of substance to number. Enough definitions for now, I fancy. And we have another author's note, or translator's note. 8 of 4. This chapter is a fascinating investigation of various refinements of the notion of matter and of its application in explanation. Aristotle begins by making clear that the notion of matter is, as we might say, relative, with any given particular being derived from its proximate, and also more remote and ultimately primary matter. For example, a box is derived from wood as its proximate matter, more remotely from earth, which is the proximate matter for wood, and more remotely still from the primary matter, which underlies earth too. The hierarchy of matter makes it possible for the same entity to be realized in different matters, and for different entities to be realized in the same matter. The main consequence of this for explanation is that, since explanation should always be in terms of the proximate cause, the characteristics of the proximate matter play a crucial part in material explanation. This has the consequence that there is a fundamental difference between the explanation of things with sensible and that of things with non-sensible matter. That is the end of the translator's note. Back to the metaphysics. A point now about material substance. Even if we assume that all things are produced from the same primary material, or from the same things as primary materials, and that it is the same matter that serves as principle for all products, it is still the case that each thing has its proper matter. The proper matter, for example, of phlegm is sweet or fatty stuffs. The appropriate matter of bile bitter stuffs, or some other, though they may both come from the same stuff, and the same object will contain many matters when one material thing is itself the matter of another. To take our example, phlegm is materially composed of the fatty, and assuming that the sweet is derived from the sweet, but phlegm can also be produced even from bile, by the dissolution of the bile into its primary matter. You can see there are two ways in which X can be produced or derived from Y. Either A, Y lies on the material route to X, or B, Y has been dissolved into its material principle. What makes possible the derivation of diverse products from what is a single material is the efficient cause. From wood, for instance, you can produce a box or a bed. There are, however, still some things whose diversity requires material diversity. For instance, that a saw cannot be produced from wood is not something to be laid at the door of any efficient cause. No efficient cause could make a saw out of wood or wool. if, conversely, it is possible for the same thing to be produced from different matter, obviously the skill or principle operating as the efficient cause is the same. Were both the matter and the efficient cause different, so too would be the product. If, then, we are doing causal investigation, given this diversity of causal accounts, all admissible causes should be included in our account. What, we might ask, is the material cause of man? The sort of answer that we want is something like menstrual fluid. What is the efficient cause? Candidate answer, the sperm. What is the formal cause? The what it was to be that thing. What finally, the final cause? The the purpose of having man around. Of course, maybe the latter two are the same thing. The point is that the proximate causes must figure in the account. In the material case, we can leave out fire and earth, but must include the material peculiar to man. With natural substances which get produced, this is always the right method, assuming A, that the causes are the ones we favor, and that there are neither more nor fewer of them, and B, that it is the causes that interest the scientist. Not so, however, with those natural substances that are eternal. For it may well be that some of these lack matter, or that they have matter, but matter unlike that of producible substances and characterized only by locomotion. Also, anything that is natural but not a substance, say an eclipse, will lack matter. There will be some substance that is their substrate. What, we ask, is the cause of an eclipse? 1. What is its matter? And here, the answer is that the eclipse does not have matter, but that the moon, which is a substance, is its substrate. 2. What is the efficient cause? What extinguishes the light? The earth does. 3. The final cause may well be an or a. 4. The formal cause is the account, which, however, illuminates nothing unless as an account it includes the efficient cause. What does this mean? Well, take the question, what is eclipse? And the answer, privation of light. This is the account minus efficient cause. Add by the passage of the earth between moon and sun, and you have the account plus efficient cause. Sleep is another such natural non-substance, but here the primary substrate is moot. The animal, you will say, of course, but in what respect? In what respect as a primary substrate? And here the sort of answer we want is the heart, or whatever. Okay, what about the efficient cause? And when we have cleared that up, what exactly is it that happens to the animal in sleep? Happens, that is, to the primary substrate, whatever it turns out to be, not to the animal as a whole. Candidate, answer, and ... lack of motion. Sure, but by dint of what exactly happening to the primary substrate? Next page. Sorry, I just drank something. We have another author's note. 8 of 5. Translator's note. This chapter contributes 3 further supplementary points to the discussion of matter. Most of them familiar from Aristotle's other discussions of matter. The first is that nothing can have matter unless it comes into and passes out of being by a process. Thus, a point, for example, does not have matter. The second contribution is the explanation that matter is potentially both of a pair of contraries, being potentially the positive contrary by dint of having the form in question, and being potentially the negative contrary by dint of privation of that form. This leads naturally to the final point, which is that the position reached does not commit us to saying that, for instance, wine is potentially vinegar or a body potentially a corpse. It is not the wine but its matter that is potentially vinegar, and similarly with the body, and that by privation of the form of wine or of the soul. That is the end of the translator's note. Back to the metaphysics. Now some things have, or do not have, being without any process of production or destruction. Examples are points. If they have being and forms in general, it is not, for instance, white that gets produced, but white wood, assuming all production to be from something and of something. So it is not the case that all opposites are produced from one another. The derivation of a white man from a black man is quite different from that of white from black. Nor indeed does everything have matter. On the contrary, you only have matter if you get produced and are in mutual interchange with something else. Anything which either does or does not have being without any change does not have matter. There is, however, a philosophical problem about the relation of the matter of each thing to its opposites. For example, the body is potentially healthy, and disease is the opposite of health. Is, then, the body in potentiality diseased no less than healthy? Is water in potentiality no more wine than vinegar? If we balk at this, perhaps the thing to say is that water is the matter of wine by dint of being in a certain condition and having a form, whereas it is the matter of vinegar by dint of a privation and unnatural corruption. And another question is why it is that wine is not the matter of vinegar, nor vinegar in potentiality. After all, vinegar is produced from it. Why, similarly, is a living thing not in potentiality a corpse? Perhaps the processes of destruction are accidental, so that it is the matter of the animal itself that is the potential and matter for the corpse in the event of destruction, and mere water that is the potential and matter of vinegar. It is then only by replacement on the night or day model that a corpse comes from an animal or vinegar from wine. Any things, in fact, which in this way change into one another must do so by returning to their matter. If animal comes from a corpse, what happens is that the corpse changes first into its matter, and from this into an animal. Similarly, vinegar only gets to wine by going first through water. Another author's note. Translator's note. I keep saying authors, it's translators. Ada 6. The last chapter of Ada is devoted to a problem which became progressively important in the second half of Zeta, and has been central to Ada. The problem of the unity of definition and thus of substance. In Zeta, Aristotle's assumption has been that definitions are purely form, in the sense that it is only form and not the composite of form and matter that is defined. In Ada, Aristotle seems more sympathetic to the definition of the composite. This also leads to a modified approach to the problem of the unity of definition. In the account of formal definition in Zeta, unity was ensured by the fact that the genus is in a way contained in the differentia. In the account of composite definition in Ada, unity is secured by the fact that the material of the composite is in a similar way subsumed under the form. Matter is apt to be shaped by form, and form is apt to impose structure on matter. It is in this mutual adaptation that the unity of the composite and of its definition consists. This notion of mutual aptitude points clearly towards the doctrine of potentiality and actuality, which has been in the background to the discussion of substance in Zeta and Eta. Potentiality and actuality are the central subjects of Book Theta, after which the subject of unity is again considered in Iota. That is the end of the translator's note. Back to the metaphysics. To resume now the issue introduced above, which applies both to definitions and to numbers, let us ask what is the cause for these items of there being a unity. Now, anything that has a plurality of parts, but is not just the sum of these, like a heap, but exists as a whole beyond its parts, invariably has a cause. In the case of bodies, for instance, it is contact that is the cause of being a unity for some of them, whereas for others it is viscosity or some other such affection. And with a definition, what makes it a single account is not mere connection, as the Iliad is merely connected together, but the fact that it is a unity that it is the account of. Okay, but then the question is, what makes man, say, a unity? Why is man a unity and not a plurality of, as it may be, animal and biped? Especially if, as claimed in certain quarters, animal itself and biped itself exist, why is man not the latter entities together? In which case, it will not be by participating in man, or any other unity, that men exist, but by doing so in two things, animal and biped, and in every other way as well. Man would not be a unity, but a plurality, viz., animal and biped. At any rate, it is plain as a pikestaff that the patrons of this method of definition and accounting, who do not shrink from offering definitions and accounts, cannot give a principled resolution of this difficulty. If, on the other hand, our account is adopted so that we allow a matter component and a shape or form component, one existing potentially, the other in actuality, the difficulty in which the question is held to be shrouded disappears. The present question, to wit, would be the same as would confront a definition. of cloak as round bronze. Here, the name would pick out the account, and then our question would be what the cause is of the fact that round and bronze are a unity. But then it is immediately clear that that if this is the difficulty, it has evaporated. The account is of a unity because one component is material, and the other shape or form. And then suppose we ask, but what is the cause of the fact that what has potential being exists in actuality? Not, of course, asking for the productive cause in the case of the outputs of production, but here the answer is just this: there is no other cause of the fact that what is potentially a sphere is in actuality a sphere. It is just being a sphere that is the what it was to be that thing for them both. Let us, by all means, not forget that there is intelligible matter no less than there is perceptible matter. In all cases, however, there is a material and an actual component to the account. Circle, for instance, is plain figure. Anything, however, that has neither intelligible nor perceptible matter, a possessor of thisness, a quality, or a quantity, is straight off a unity of a kind. In each case, just as each is also straight off a being of a kind, hence the absence of both being and unity from definitions. Though what it was to be that thing too is a unity of a kind straight off, just as it is being of a kind. And that is why none of these things has some other cause of their being a unity any more than they do of their being a being of a kind. Each is straight off both being off a being of a kind and a unity of a kind, nor is the cause of this their having being and unity as their genus, nor their separability from particulars. And it is because of this problem that some philosophers have espoused participation, though this plunges them into difficulties about what the cause of the participation is, or indeed what participating is anyway. Another variation is to go for quote-unquote cohabitation. Lycophron, for instance, has it that knowledge is the cohabitation of knowing and the soul. Yet another option is to say that living is the synthesis or colligation of soul to body. But the same argument ends up covering all the cases, for being well would just as well be the cohabitation or synthesis or colligation of soul and health. Bronze, being a triangle, would be the synthesis of bronze, and triangle to be white to be the synthesis of surface and whiteness. And the cause of this is that both a unity conferring account and a differentiation of potentiality and actuality are being sought, whereas as here advertised, the last matter and the shape form are the same thing, and a unity, the one in potentiality, the other in actuality. So what is being sought boils down to the question what the cause of unity and of something's being a unity is. For each thing is a unity, and the thing in potentiality is in a kind of way a unity with the thing in actuality. There is, therefore, no cause here, except, boringly, whatever has caused the transition from potentiality to actuality, and, of course, with things that do not have matter, they are all unitized of a kind simplicator. That is the end of Book Eta. The next book is Book Theta.